Guys, welcome into the Gashouse Gang. We got a trio today. Bernie, Miklasz, Matt, Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you. The Gashouse Gang is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling and my friends at Game Day Men's Health. You can find them at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. How you guys doing today, man? Are we good to go?
We're good. Let's do this.
We're good, man. I got to tell you, we're so close to the season that I'm edgy, man. Like I need real games. I need, look, there's still a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. And we'll obviously bring some of that to the table today, but we also just need like evidence that really counts, right? Because everything that's going on in Florida and Arizona is going to be erased in 5 days.
Yes.
It's all going to be erased. And we can finally then get into, all right, what's happening, what matters, what doesn't.
I'm so with you. I think we've all been talking about that. When you're so close to the regular season, it's like, who gives a damn about what spring training stats may say, right? It's just, we're right there. And so we're going to get the answers and the real results soon enough. And even then, it's not like all the answers will be evident and clear, like say the first 3 weeks of the season,
Right. Well, on opening day, if you lose, it's over.
That's right. No doubt about it. No I think like the Cubs season's over. They're
done.
They lost 2 to the Dodgers. They're done. And Pirates will win more games than them this year.
Oh,
no question about it.
Let's go.
Because they lost 2 games to the Dodgers. I think look pretty damn good, I'd say, right?
Yeah, they did. I think we learned like during the COVID year that we need all 6 weeks of spring training for guys to get ready. It's just It doesn't look good if they don't go through these 6 weeks of it. But from a fan perspective, oh my Lord, spring training is way too long. It takes forever. And then people like us start talking about really stupid, dumb things and try to put a lot more meaning to things that just don't have that much meaning. So it's a double-edged sword because the players need it. The players need all 6 weeks of spring training. The last thing we want is the regular season to get started and guys not be ready and not go through it. We've learned that already, but it's so long.
Yeah, I want to throw something at you guys. I think we've texted about it, and we all have in different ways. We do pay attention to what matters, like what's happening, and what's happening in spring training matters to a degree, and the key is the to a degree part. But like, what is? I think would you guys agree with this statement? Like, it's absolutely fair to be concerned about the Cardinals offense. It's fair to be concerned about any player, pitcher or hitter, that is not performing the way you would expect them to, right? But there's a difference between just being concerned and saying, okay, that's something we got to monitor in the regular season versus, oh my God, it's over. Where it's panic time. What are you going to do? This is a disaster. Like, I think there's a fine line between those two things. And I bet most fans live in the middle, but not on social media. The social media is all about, screaming and yelling and freaking out because things don't look the way you want them to.
No, that's right. And I've said this before, say it again. I do think the spring training stats have value if we're talking about a true job competition.
Sure.
If the team frames that something is a competition, well, then that's basically telling the world, including Cardinals fans, well, yeah, these guys are all going to get a chance and there's a competition. And so, we'll be monitoring it, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. Then there's one position in particular that I'm talking about and everyone knows what that is. So either spring training, I'm talking about in the eyes of the club, either spring training, when you announce there's going to be a competition, either the spring training performances matter or they don't. It's as simple as that. Don't say it's a competition unless you really mean it.
Yep.
It's also, though, and I'm not trying to let anybody off the hook here, despite the fact that it may sound that way. There's a lot. There was I think either Derek or Daniel from the Post-Dispatch just wrote in the last day or two about all the extra work that guys are doing in the backfields right now. There's just not enough opportunities in Grapefruit League games with what's going on, that they're doing a lot more in the backfields. And they monitor and they have the same statistical and technology and everything back there, so they know what's going on. So yes, spring training stats do matter when there's competitions and things like that to a certain extent, but there's things that fans can't see that matter too. I guess that's the point that I'm trying
So what
to
you're saying is Michael Ciani's lighting it up on the backfields.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there to be totally fair about things, there is more to
No, that's true.
the decisions that are being made than what's happening in 9
Yes.
random innings of a Grapefruit League game.
No, that's true. In
Absolutely.
fact, I asked Mo about that a couple weeks ago when I was filling in for Tom on Sunday. It's basically like, talk to us about all of the things that matter. And he did mention that, look, we're getting all this batted ball data in live BPs, and we're getting it in simulated games, and we're getting it in minor league games. And he said, but he did say, like, the games we see, they matter too. It's just a matter of dividing it up. One thing isn't the only thing. There are probably 3 or 4 things that are being evaluated, including defense. And to the point about center field, all of the word from Mo and from Ollie and from everybody else has been that Victor Scott has done a lot of the things they wanted him to do defensively, courtessy of my guy, John Jay. So
nobody said a bad thing about Victor Scott II this entire spring.
No,
last year,
it's all positive.
Yes, there's not been a single negative thing said about Victor Scott II this entire spring, no matter what lens we're putting him under.
Yeah, that's about right. So let's continue on this topic, since we're on the offense for a second. So you can treat this as what you think they should do, or you can treat this as a prediction for what you believe they will do. But if the offense starts the year slow, and let's just go a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, and your offense is struggling, do you think they go back to old reliable and take we're going to lean into defense? Or do you think they're going to give the runway they've been talking about? Because, again, I think we all agree that that's the right way based on the way the season's been positioned, based on what we need to find out about guys. But I always worry about them falling back to some of those old standbys.
No, I agree. And I think, Ollie Marmol's an interesting manager in this regard. His first seat. Well, let me note in 2023, the Cardinals were really, really brutal defensively. And I know I was writing columns and, hosting a talk show, and I made a big fuss over it because I'm like, look, I'm not saying, you have to put everything on defense, but their base running was really sloppy. Their defense was sloppy. And I'm like, listen, you can do something about this. First of all, you got to put an effort into making sure these guys are sharp defensively and they're sharp running the bases. And to his credit, I mean, that was a point of emphasis in spring training in 2024. And the Cardinals were much improved in both areas. And I'm not talking about stolen base success rate. That's more of a reflection of the fact they don't have a lot of fast guys.
Right.
And maybe some of the techniques are off. That's why Mason Wynn's been working so hard to sharpen those techniques. But, there's a danger there. I like to say this a lot. There is a happy medium, right? You don't have to make every decision based on, well, we got to have a great defense. When your offense has been awful 2 years in a row, you gotta, the weight you put on offense has got to be heavier going into this year. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And that's the thing that's frustrating. And I'll be curious to see how Ollie Marmol handles it, because I really appreciated his work last season with that. And I don't think any of it really I don't think it impacted the Cardinals offense in any way, because they just had too many players doing nothing, basically.
Yeah. And too many proven guys doing nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And, we talk about the runway, and I said this the other day, the runway seems to be there for Gorman and Walker and nobody else. And there is that, like Kevin, you said it, there's this feeling of overvaluing some parts of the game. And I think outfield defense is that. And they've got to be willing to do something different if the offense isn't there. This team cannot afford to have a bad start to the season and get into a big hole, because clearly they are not built to build out of a significant deficit. That's a very unlikely thing for this team to do this year. So they've got to be a pretty good offensive club right from the start of the season. And that means they're going to have to turn their fortunes around from spring. The other day, Kevin, you sent something out about their offense, or somebody sent something out about the offense. And I started going through numbers, and I started going through different, date ranges to see if I could find like a time where the numbers had started to go in the right direction. And you could find some moments, but then they don't continue. They stop and it kind of goes back. And that's what's sort of worrisome for me, because if they started terribly offensively and it was just kind of a slow moving up, well, then you can kind of deal with that. But whether it's the actual baseball card numbers or whether it's the underlying numbers, there just continues to be a lot to be concerned about. So if it's going to continue that way into the start of the regular season, they have to put the best possible offensive lineup on the field. And that probably means Lars Nootbaar in center field.
Yep.
They have to do that because they got to score runs at the beginning of the year.
You got it, man. All right. It's the Gashouse gang. Bernie Miklasz, Matt Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you here. We're going to talk about kind of that, really. Like, how do we make this team exciting, and what does that look like, and what does it mean? Because, look, this is about selling tickets and things, too. It's about winning games, but it's also about getting fans excited. We'll get into that in a second. But first up, Bernie, tell us about Saliga.
Oh, my friends at Saliga Heating and Cooling, they've been taking care of our family for 16 years, and we love them. And Dan Saliga is the proud owner and operator of the family business. The Saligas, the family has owned this business since 1927. Dan's a fourth-generation owner-operator. We've come to really love the fact that they're so honest. Their integrity is impeccable. They try to save us money. They don't try to sell us stuff or talk us into things we don't need. Total honesty, and also the professionalism, the knowledge, and they're always on the cutting edge of technology. They're very much up to date on stuff that can help you in terms of heating and cooling in some other areas in your home, like indoor air quality. So before I sign off on this one, this proud American Standard heating and cooling dealer has a great program for maintenance called Priority Program, the Priority Club, pardon me. And you can save money and you can have the peace of mind just by having a couple times a year a maintenance check. And it's really valuable. And we've come to really appreciate how much money it saved us, and also just the peace of mind we have before the hot weather or the cold weather. So it's SaligaHeatingandCooling.com, SaligaHeatingandCooling.com. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about excitement, because to me, there are a few ways to generate excitement, right? To get fans fired up and wanting to watch games, wanting to come to games. Obviously, one is winning. So that leads to what you were talking about, Matt, getting off to a good start. Another one would be like a high-powered offense where you're just providing, entertainment value. Ideally, if you're doing that, you're winning. But the point is that helps. Having somebody special, somebody that's a 40 or 50 homer guy, like what Albert used to be when he was here. Having a special talent that's just different. Having a starting pitcher that's like that. Ryan Helsley has that stuff, right? Ryan Helsley throws 102, and he's a wipeout guy, and he strikes people out. But, when you're going to a game, you don't know if you're going to see him or not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Every fifth day in Pittsburgh, you know that
right.
you go see Paul Skeens pitch.
Right. Like closers don't sell tickets and they don't build excitement. So when I say special players, yeah, you can mean Judge or it can mean Skeens. It can also mean energy guys. It can mean a guy like Victor Scott. It can mean Mason Wynn ramping up the speed game and doing all that. So for you guys, what's the most likely way that the Cardinals can provide excitement? And if it's not exciting early, how do you change it?
Go ahead, Matt.
I mean, the first thing is just winning games, getting off to a hot start. The most exciting players potentially on the team are Mason Wynn and Victor Scott because of the way they play the game. It's fun to watch those guys do what they do, Wynn what he does defensively. Obviously, you get Scott on the bases and you just watch him go. But honestly, I don't know if that is selling tickets. I think this team has to be winning games more than anything else. The experience of Busch Stadium sells tickets. Cardinals baseball overall
sure,
is going to sell you some tickets. But in terms of, do they have an individual player who, do they have an Albert Pujols? Do they have a Mark McGwire? Do they have one of those guys who can single-handedly get people to walk through the turnstiles? With all due respect, and I love Mason Wynn, and I'm excited about what Victor Scott's going to be at some point. And Nolan Arenado might be the greatest defensive third baseman in the history of Major League Baseball. If he's not, he's in the conversation. Like, these are all notable things that are really fun to watch, and I hope Cardinals fans walk through those doors and see those things. But I don't know if anybody's like, you know what? It's a Tuesday night. The Padres are in town. I want to see Mason Wynn play shortstop, so I'm going to go spend some money and go to Busch Stadium. I don't think that conversation's happening.
Well, I'm with you all the way. I think Mason Wynn's a star in the making, but there's some areas where to really become a true star, he's going to have to get better at some things. The manager's also got to be smarter about how he puts him in the lineup, which I have very little hope for at this point. To put him in a spot where his offense is actually more beneficial to the team, because a 290 leadoff on base percentage is not beneficial to the team at all. It's actually a detriment to the offense. So the manager has something to do with that, good or bad. But the biggest problem, with this team in terms of like what's exciting, and you guys touched on it. I'll just elaborate on it. They have no star power. Who they have, in my opinion, one elite player, and that's Ryan Helsley. Like one kind of best in class type of player. That's Ryan Helsley. Sonny Gray is an upper tier starter. And by the way, I don't give a damn about his spring training stats. If he's pitching like this in the middle of May, then we can talk about it. Sonny Gray is really good, right? He's really good, but is he really ace, like rise to that level of ace, like where you say, oh yeah, that guy's one of the aces in a rotation in baseball? And I don't mean any disrespect to him. Helsley is elite. Arenado used to be elite. Goldie used to be elite when he was here. They have some good players, and they have some players with real potential, like Nolan Gorman. And if he could ever start hitting home runs and being consistent, he could be a big star in a hurry. And that's a big ask because he's been so inconsistent. But pardon me because I'm like the old timer here. But I've been covering Cardinals baseball since 1985, and I have to say, I don't want to overstate it. I don't want to say this is absolutely the team with the least amount of star power I've seen in St. Louis. I'd have to study that. But it's certainly near the bottom. And the Cardinals have always had, during the Bill DeWitt era, they've always had incredible star power. And it wasn't just one guy. I mean, and I know we can't live in the past, but, when you have Pujols and Edmonds and Roland in 2004, for example, and that was only part of it, Renteria.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on and on. It just never ended, And now, it's like people like me are like, wow, JJ Weatherholt's probably the hope for a real star, and I don't even know when he'll be in the majors, So and then the other thing, and I'll shut up after this. The other thing, I'm gonna put this on the fans, not all of them. I actually think we in the media could do a better job of this. The Cardinals have, and here I go again about this because I'm on a crusade. Wilson Contreras, and I know he's missed games with injuries, but Wilson Contreras has been an outstanding hitter for 2 straight seasons. Mm-hmm. He's been one of the best right-handed hitters in the majors. He's really, 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 really good. Do you think there's widespread appreciation of that? I think he's an exciting player. He plays with passion. He's intense. He's got great energy and enthusiasm. He's a tough guy. He's got a persona. He hits the ball as hard as you can hit a ball.
He's been a winner.
Yeah, he caught Game 7 of the 2016 World Series. He draws walks. He gets on base at a high level. He hits for power. And all I hear are like complaints about the guy.
Yeah. Look,
I don't understand that.
I can explain it. I don't agree with it, but I can explain it.
If the fans want to be excited, they ought to actually watch people that are doing a job in an exciting way offensively, and that's Wilson Contreras. I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead, buddy.
No, I interrupted you. So, look, I love Wilson Contreras. I think he's going to have a great season. I think he could very easily be an all-star first baseman. I think his offensive numbers are going to be even better what they've been as a catcher, and his numbers as a catcher offensively play perfectly fine at first base. But it's a vocal minority. It's not a majority of fans.
I agree.
It's a vocal minority because he makes the mistakes on the bases. He's not there are some mental mistakes that he makes now and then. He was drugged through the mud a couple years ago and gets this reputation as a guy who doesn't put the work in behind the plate. That doesn't even matter anymore. But there is a vocal group of Cardinals fans.
Yeah, I will note, by the way,
stuff up.
I will note, by the way, I interrupted you this time. Those accusations were made by sorry, lazy, no-account pitchers who wouldn't accept responsibility for their own failing. So they threw him under the bus, and the manager went along with it. So, yeah, that was disgraceful. But go ahead. Sorry, man.
Yeah, it was terrible. And credit Contreras. Think about that. Like, real quick. Wilson Contreras had the opportunity to walk out the door. They went to him and said, would you be okay being traded? And he says, no, I want to remain a St. Louis Cardinal. He did that after being drugged through the mud a year and a half earlier and losing his job after he had been the marquee free agent signing of the offseason. Like, for him to go through what he went through and still have a commitment to the Cardinals, it is truly an honorable thing on his part.
Sure.
And I think all Cardinals fans should appreciate him for that.
This team would be served very well if he is the centerpiece of the team's energy.
Mm-hmm.
If he is the guy that sets the tone for how this team plays, that would be a good thing. They've got to get away from the Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am, boring, blah, blah, blah. Because that's not baseball anymore. Look around, man. Look around. Look at all the star players. Look at the teams that are selling tickets. Look at the fun people out there. They're actually out there having fun. They're not out there pouting. They're not out there being super serious and don't you dare offend us. No, they're having fun. And now I think the Cardinals have some of those guys that'll do that, but you got to have stature to lead the way. And I hope this becomes his team. I hope this is Wilson Contreras' clubhouse.
And let me throw this one at you too. It's all related. I would hope that there would be some appeal. There would be some excitement if the Cardinals become one of these underdog type teams, if they become one of those underdog type teams where they may not have a huge star. And even if they have a star, Contreras, he won't be viewed as that by a lot of fans for reasons that bewilder me. But anyway, but if you have a team with that kind of energy we're talking about, if guys like Nootbaar and Donovan are really, really good and they take over in terms of young leaders, Contreras is a leader.
Right.
They kind of, all these guys, and they're not the only ones, but they kind of represent what we want to see out of like team leaders and a vibe and energy and all that stuff. So if the Cardinals evolve into one of those teams where the sum is greater than the parts and there's just all kinds of positive energy and guys busting their ass and playing really, really hard. Is that enough to kind of light a fuse to get fans more excited? The fans don't have to get excited.
No.
I'm just wondering if something like that would do it.
Could be. I mean, like people do love the us against the world thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
If you get to that, you get that vibe going. It can definitely work. And I think like it's not. And I want to be clear too. What I'm saying, I'm not putting the fans in the position where they need to create the excitement. The team's got to do the work, right? The team's got to do their jobs. They got to play a fun style. They got to win games. You got to have people with standout performances. But I think if you're open to that, I would love to see that be this team's identity.
Yeah.
You know, people are counting us out and we're going to quote unquote rally the troops. Be fun.
No doubt.
Be fun. Bernie Miklasz, Matt Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you here on the Gashouse Gang. Let's broaden it a little bit. So I would say, what was it, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, we started to look a little bit at the NL Central. But obviously, early in spring, it's harder to know. Now we're rounding this thing out, man. We kind of know where the rosters are going to be. We know that some of these teams have suffered some injuries. And I'm not saying that I know how this division is going to go because I don't. I think the Cubs probably are in the best position. But I've watched all of these teams a good bit in spring, and I've been doing my homework all spring long, and there's a lot of mediocrity in this division. There, like nobody sells me. Like I want to say, yeah, the Cubs because Kyle Tucker's probably the best hitter in the division. But outside of him and Suzuki and Bush, I'm not sure how much offense they're going to have. I love Imanaga and Steele, but what's that rotation look like after that with a bunch of guys throwing 89 to 91? And I feel the same way about the Brewers. I feel the same way about the Reds. The Pirates, it's just a shame they didn't spend on offense because they have the pitching. They have some of the pieces, but they just don't have a lineup that can compete on an everyday basis. So, do you guys see it the same way? Because I'm not trying to elevate the Cardinals in this conversation. I'm just looking at this and saying, I don't think there's a team in this division that would finish better than 3rd or 4th in the East or the West.
I don't know. It's all relative. First of all, can we just get away from the NL Central for a moment? Because other than 3 or 4 teams in Major League Baseball, everyone is pretty much in the same pot. They're going to win, between 80 and 86, 87 games. And mediocrity abounds. It's all over the place. In fact, I was joking with you guys before the show. The NL Central kind of was a pioneer in this regard. It's like, well, we don't really, we don't really have to go all out. Jal Mazalek was a pioneer in this regard. Well, we really don't have to go all in. And the way I put it is, it's like, it will cost you more money, generally speaking, if you really want to try to be great. But it costs you a lot less money if you just try to be good or competitive. And that attitude is all around Major League Baseball, not just the NL Central. And then real quick, I actually am in the minority here because I think the Cubs have improved in a lot of key areas. And I think they're going to be one of the few teams in baseball this year that wins 90 games, 91 games. And I'm not saying that makes them a superstar team. I'm not saying that, but I'll give you an example. The Tucker things gets a lot of attention, but they made a bunch of trades to improve their bullpen over the offseason. And I'm not going to go through all the moves. I have the names here because some of these were stealth type moves, guys that are, I think, I would hope like that Chaim Bloom will do when he starts making these decisions for the Cardinals. Like there's no big, huge name other than Ryan Presley, but they've signed a lot of good relievers. And that was one of their worst problems last season. So I really don't understand, with all due respect to you guys and a lot of people, I don't understand. My friend Will Leach says this too. And we debate it. Well, we don't debate it, but we talk about it every week. Yeah. I just don't understand this idea that somehow, where the Brewers have done nothing in the offseason, the Cardinals did nothing in the offseason, the Pirates did nothing in the offseason, and the Reds already have a lot of talent, and they hired one of the best managers who's ever lived.
Yeah.
This idea that the Cubs are just going to be floating in this pool of mediocrity, I think they're clearly better, plus the second year of Craig Counsell with more of his own coaches in place. I just think the Cubs are going to be a lot better than people think. Are they as good as the Dodgers? No. But I think I just push back on this notion that they're part of this mediocre mass. I just don't see it. I'm sorry.
I think they're clearly the best team in the NL Central, but I would push back a little bit on you, Bernie, because I don't.
Well, why?
Because who's scared? From a starting standpoint, I like Imanaga, I like Steele. The other guys don't do anything for me. I like Ryan Presley. Okay, I'll even go with you on your whole bullpen point because I think you're right on. But when you look at this lineup, the only guy in there that's really scaring you is Kyle Tucker, with all due respect to Dansby Swanson and Ian Happ and Pete Crow Armstrong and Seiya Suzuki and whoever else that you want to mention. I don't think this is a team that scares you from an offensive standpoint, and I don't think they're a team that's going to score a ton of runs.
Yeah, the area that I would push back on is I think the Braves, Phillies, and Mets are all better. I think the Braves won 89 games last year without Strider and Acuna, and those guys are coming back. The Phillies won 95 last year, and they're the same team. I'm not a full buyer into the Mets. I got my questions about them, but they were 89 wins last year, and they didn't get worse bringing in Juan Soto. Forgetting the Dodgers, because that's the Dodgers. Padres won 93 last year. Now, they lost some guys, so maybe they fall back. Arizona had everything go wrong last year and won 89 games, and they added Corbin Burns to that group. I think Arizona's really good. I think Arizona would win the Central by 5 games. And I would say that the Phillies, the Braves, and the Mets would all probably do the same thing.
The Cubs last year, and I agree, they were not laden with superstars, but they did finish in the upper half of the National League in runs per game. And they did actually, yeah. And I think Kyle Tucker's, pretty decent little upgrade for them, at least for 1 year.
That's a big upgrade. That's huge.
I think Michael Busch is going to be even better this year. I mean, I think he had a stealth kind of season. I don't know what the kid at third base is going to do. That remains to be seen. But I just think I think they underachieved last year more than anything. I think I think part of it was Craig Counsell, wanting to get things where they need to be. And I think he's better suited to do that. Just going by some of the comments he's made during spring training, and he's not a BS guy. No, he seems to like this team a lot better than the team he had last year. And I think that's important because he sees a little Milwaukee flavor in it, I think. So we'll find out. I will find out. Yeah. I mean, it's the beauty of a 162 game season.
To your point, I'll even argue against myself. The Cubs clearly did not have the record they should have last year. They were plus 60 something on the run differential.
Right.
So they should have been better, right? Their Pythagorean record's probably more like 86 or 87 instead of 83. So that's a point against what Matt and I are saying. Well, I like to argue so much, I'll argue with myself.
I guess what I'm trying to say is we know the Dodgers are a power. We know that the Braves are a consistent power. I think the Phillies are really, really good, but I think we overrate the Phillies now. And I think people in Philadelphia will tell you that. they have never followed through on the promise of what they did in 2022. And they're good, but they also have a window that's closing pretty rapidly. I mean, a lot of their key pieces are getting really old. And, I also think so, but listen, the Phillies won 95 games last year, so I should shut up. That's excellent. No, but I'm just saying they haven't been able to get anything done in the postseason.
You're right about that.
Big run, and I just so I know the Dodgers are a superpower. I know the Braves can be. I know the Mets are poised to be, but I still have some questions with them.
I do too.
And for all the hullabaloo made over them last year, they won 89 games. Okay,
that's right.
So in the National League, the Braves are great. The Dodgers are great. The Braves are very good, bordering on great. The Phillies are very good, but maybe the window's closing. I just don't see, just because the Cubs aren't the Dodgers, it doesn't mean they're mediocre. That's the point I'm trying to make.
That's fair.
And, I just don't, I don't understand the mentality here. I really don't. All due respect to my friends here.
I don't think the difference between really good and mediocre is that's what 4 or 5. A really good team wins 89 and a mediocre team wins 84. So we're talking about 5 wins being the difference between really good and mediocre. So it gets a little bit challenging to really start getting in on that line of what differentiates between a good team and a just above average team.
The Cubs last year had the 3rd best ERA in the National League. And they were a top 6 offense, I believe. They underachieved. They didn't do well in close games. You know why they didn't do well in close games? Because the bullpen was really bad. The bullpen is not going to be really bad this year. It's going to be better.
Yeah.
I mean, let us take a lesson from the 2024 Cardinals here. That wasn't a good team. The bullpen was magnificent, and it's the only reason why they won 83 games.
Yeah.
That's the best point that you've made, Bernie, on the Cubs, and it's a point that I don't think you can argue against.
No, I think you're right. I think that may be the difference. And obviously this division, and let's just finish up by expanding it a little bit. Bernie Miklasz.
By the way, I think it's a great discussion, and I'm glad. And you know what? And I'm glad that we don't always agree on everything. I think that's fun.
Oh, it would suck if we did.
No, exactly.
Way more fun.
We have some honest disagreements, but I don't have any less respect for my friends Matt Pauley and Kevin Wheeler. If we disagree, so what?
Steel sharpens steel, right?
That's right.
All right, it's Bernie Miklasz, Matt Pauley, Kevin Wheeler with you on the Gashouse gang. So let's look at the other ones, but specifically the Brewers and the Reds. I've been falling back on this, and Matt, you obviously know the Brewers very well. They always seem to be a team that's underestimated, and they pull things out. At some point it has to catch up, right? Some point it has to catch up. I don't know if this is that year, but I think they are more with the pack to me this year than they were even in the last couple years.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, but you know what? I agree every stupid year, and I'm wrong every year. And I worked there and covered that team for parts of 7 seasons. So if there's anybody who shouldn't be saying what I'm about to say, it's this guy right here. But man, they don't look great. I think Brandon Woodruff is a little bit of a wild card here because he's starting to ramp up a bit. And if he can find the old version of himself and all of a sudden he's there, then you've got like a Cy Young caliber kind of guy at the top of the rotation. And then maybe that starts to change my belief on them. But the lineup, you know who Jackson Chourio is. He's fantastic and he's getting better. And he is a dangerous, dangerous player. We talked earlier about the Cardinals, about having a guy that brings, fans into the ballpark. Well, Jackson Chourio be doing that in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
They're still trying to figure out what they're going to be doing on the infield, with second, third, and short, with Adames leaving. It's, mix and match between Terang and Durbin and Ortiz and just all those guys. And, which guy's going to play second, which guy's going to play short, which guy's going to play third. I was just reading something from my friend Adam McCalvey, who covers the Brewers for MLB.com, that in the last week or so, the Brewers are thinking about completely reshuffling who was going to play which infield spot. But none of those guys do a whole lot for me. Garrett Mitchell's got to take a big step forward if that team's going to be good. So I don't know. I don't love the Brewers on paper, but I'm also I can at least remember the past, and I realize the fact that they're probably just going to go win the division again.
I feel like every year I feel the same way about them. It's like they're losing. Like last year, you lost Burns and you didn't have Woodruff either, and it didn't end up really mattering. Williams was down, didn't really end up mattering. They keep finding a way to fill in places. And I do think that's why they get the benefit of the doubt. And Bernie, let's close on the Reds because they were a team I bought into last year. I thought they had a chance to be pretty good. And obviously had some pitching injuries. A bunch of guys on the offensive side didn't come through, but now Terry Francona's there. You got a little bit more experience under some guys' belts. A couple of the pitchers are back. I think they have potential, but I also worry about what their floor is.
Yeah, here's the deal. In my opinion, they have an underrated rotation. It's better than people think, and part of that is they're going to have to keep guys healthier. But they're really talented in their rotation, and they have options too. The other thing is that there's a lot of talent on that team offensively, and there's a lot of fast people on that team offensively. But David Bell, who's a wonderful man, was a terrible manager. He never at any point cleaned up their defense or their base running. And Tito Francona took over. You're having one of the best managers of his generation. And he took over and he said they talked, the scribes and the media down there talked to him before spring training. And they said, what's your priority? And he said, we're going to work on defense. Then we're going to work on base running. These are words that never came out of David Bell's mouth. So they won 77. They won 77 games last year with a really bad manager and a really undisciplined, sloppy team. I don't know. I think the Tito Francona effect. I ain't saying they're going to win the division. I'm not saying they're going to win like 88 games, but they're going to be a better team in 2025.
You would think, yeah.
The talent is there. And I'm not going to go through the stats, but it's unbelievable how bad they were defensively and almost, just as well. I have it right in front of me. They made more outs on the base path last season than any team in the majors, and it was by a wide margin. They got it's unbelievable what a sloppy, fundamentally poor team that was. Do you think that's going to stay the same under Francona? I don't.
Probably not.
No,
probably not. But so some of that is like getting Matt McLean back helps some of that. He's an everyday player at second base. TJ Friedel's a really good defensive center fielder. He missed a ton of time last year with injury. So yeah, I mean there are some really good ways they can be better, and I'm a big fan of their starting rotation, and the ability in there. I thought Brady Singer was a nice stabilizer. I think Lodolo has a big upside. Hunter Green's awesome. Andrew Abbott's very solid for a number 4 starter, number 5 starter. Nick Martinez, same thing, very stable. I will say the thing that scares me about them right now is the bullpen, because Alexis Diaz struggled last year, and he's also struggling in the spring. And there's some talk about Scott Barlow and Taylor Rogers, who's a 34-year-old lefty, maybe being 9th inning options early in the year. So that might be, we just talked about how the bullpen for the Cubs could change things, how the bullpen for the Cardinals last year changed things. I worry a little bit about that for the Reds this year, that, as good as Tito is. And by the way, they do have 2 guys that might see the major leagues this year. A kid named Zach Maxwell, who's like 6'6", 280 and throws 100 miles an hour. You may see him back there even on opening day. So you never know, if that kind of thing shows up, it could change it.
Well, they were 3rd in the majors in save percentage last year, but I agree that there's some concerns over individual relievers.
Be fascinating. They got some arms, They got another kid named Luis May that throws 100 miles an hour too, who's down there. Probably more AA, AAA, but still they could change that as the season goes along. And look, they have the dynamic guy to build around, right? I mean, look at the Cubs have Kyle Tucker. The Brewers have Jackson Chourio. And obviously the Reds have Ellie De La Cruz. The Pirates' big guy is Paul Skeens. That's what goes back to our discussion at the beginning, right? Everybody in the division has that dude that you can at least say, this is the kind of the cornerstone that we can build around. Cards got to find that. All right. We agree. Look at that. Well, that's a good show. All right. Well, we got a lot of time to pick this up. In fact, I think, Bernie, you and I are on our normal day tomorrow. Matt, you're always welcome to pop in if you ever want to, and you're not chasing kids around the house before you come to work in the afternoon. But it's been great. Thank you guys for the comments. We appreciate you. It's only going to get bigger and deeper and heavier as we go. because we're getting to the games that really count coming up a week from tomorrow. Yeah, that's right. A week from tomorrow, opening day at Busch Stadium. For Bernie Miklasz and Matt Pauley, I'm Kevin Wheeler. Guys, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you. This is the Gashouse Gang.